Um, Absence of physical cues. So a lot of things they do online, there's no facial expression or tone of voice to guide them. Quantifiable, everything they do, they're counting the likes, the number of followers, the number of friends. Numbers really tell them the whole story of who they are online. Visual, it's a super visual culture. Like everything they do is video and pictures. So that really defines what they're doing online. And finally, this is the one that really concerns me, is the algorithms on all the social media apps, YouTube, etc. Decide what our kids like and what they want to show them, and shows them more of the same. So especially for kids that are just figuring out who they are and what they like, that's a concerning aspect of this whole socialization online. So while that's really changed, one thing that has not changed is really what parents want for their kids. This was written by a good friend of mine, Michelle Borba, who wrote the foreword to my book. And she has visited parents all over the world, and she finds that they all want to do the same thing. They want to raise kids who will grow up to be good and kind. And I would argue that that's probably what all of us here tonight want to do as well. So how do we do this? And I gave this a lot of deep thought as I was writing my book. And in my book, I compare digital parenting to like building a house. Your house is only as good as the time you put into it. It takes a long time to build a good house. You want to have a really strong foundation of social and emotional skills. Those are what guide our kids when they finally do go online. And then I think the things that they need to know about online life can really be put into 4 pillars of knowledge. Screen time, we want them to understand that, their reputations, their relationships, and finally, how to maintain privacy. So I'm going to start with screen time tonight because this is often what parents really worry about. And so do kids, believe it or not. So here's where we are today. During the pandemic, screen time doubled, believe it or not. It doubled from what it was before to nearly 8 hours per day. And believe it or not, this does not include time spent on screens for remote learning or schoolwork, which seems almost impossible to me. The other thing we learned is more screen time was linked to poor mental health and greater stress amongst teens. And Black and Hispanic children had about 30% more screen time than their white counterparts. So here's another study. This is a little more recent. This was just came out in 2022. You'll see here on the left, nearly all teens have access to a smartphone. Believe it or not, this is up from 73% just a few years ago. And nearly half of teens say that they use the internet almost constantly. And this is also up quite a bit from just 5 years ago. So things have really changed. Kids are online all the time. So what do we do about this? Well, before you freak out, please remember what we needed screens for specifically during the pandemic. They absolutely needed screens to do their schoolwork. Where would we have been without screens? They needed screens to maintain connections with family and friends. And research also shows that social media and video games provided really important temporary relief from real life and offer those important opportunities to connect with their friends and their family. And without screens, that would not have happened. So got to keep that in mind. And the other positive that happened during the pandemic is that with kids not in school, cyberbullying dropped significantly. And the reason for that is in-person bullying and cyberbullying are closely linked. Sadly, it's often the same poor kids that are the target of both. It's the same kids that are the perpetrators of both. So when they're not in school, it doesn't extend into the online world. But sadly, as kids have gone back into the classroom, cyberbullying has increased once again. All right, so where are we now? So I think right now we have a really unique opportunity to reframe our attitude and approach to screen time. And I'm always talking to parents about stop measuring screen time by how much, the numbers, the hours, and instead ask for what purpose. Because sometimes kids will surprise us on how they're using their screens and what they're using their screens for. So I think this is a really important thing to remember as we go forward. The other thing that really helps, I mentioned this last week for the younger kids, but this helps with teenagers too. Kids like boundaries and expectations at all ages. It's just part of what they need. And it's our job as a parent to provide that. So we have a tech agreement on our website. It's 4 pages long, and it's not a contract as much as it's talking points. So we cover all kinds of things like who owns the phone, where do the passwords go, when do they go to sleep at night, where do we put them at night, who can you be friends with? All of that stuff are things that you can talk to your kids about. This will guide you to have that conversation and then come to agreements on what's appropriate for each child at their age and stage. Sign it, think of consequences, revisit it. But I think it's really important for both of you to have some sort of agreement in place. It just makes life so much easier when it comes to our tech use. Finally, the other thing is parents are always asking me, at what age do I give my kid a connected device? And I think that's the wrong question. I think that you should ask yourself these questions before you give your child a device. Do they have great social skills? Can they manage their online reputation? Can they maintain safe relationships? Do they know how to unplug? Can they protect online privacy? Can they think critically? Are they equipped to be a digital leader? All those things are things that they can learn through digital literacy lessons. And as they get older and learn those things, I then think it's safe to give them a connected device, because remember, that thing will connect them to everyone and everything in the world. So they need to have a lot of skills in place before they get that device in their little hands. And then education really works. Everything that we talk to kids about through our cyber civics lessons really refers back to screen time. Kids need to understand this stuff in order for them to manage their own screen time, because nothing else really works. It has to be inherent within the child. So I'll show you some things we do in the classroom. These are things you can do at home too. They're pretty fun. So hopefully you'll enjoy this. One of the things I do with students, I do this with 6th graders, is I have them keep a diary of everything they do on a typical day, from the minute they wake up to the minute they go to sleep at night. So usually I'll assign this to do on a following Saturday. Then they bring their little diary back to class, and I have every child make a little bar chart of how they spent their time, so they can visually see, oh my gosh, I spent this much time doing this compared to sleeping or eating. Kind of eye-opening for a lot of students. And then I break the class into little groups of 4, and I have 4 kids add up their time. Here's a group of 4 kids that discovered that on a beautiful Southern California Saturday, they spent 41 hours in front of their screens, which was shocking even to them. And then I added up the data for the whole class. 20 some kids spent 186 and a half hours in front of their screen. So, the thing about screen time is it creeps up on us. And unless you do these little activities with kids, they sort of don't have a frame of reference on how much time screens take. So it's kind of fun to just do this assessment. Don't pass judgment. Let them take a look for themselves and see, if that's a fair use of their time. And then the next thing we do is I'm going to assign a homework assignment that the kids have to go 24 hours without screens. We call it a screen vacation. And because we know they're going to complain bitterly, we first have them make a bucket list of things they would do if there was a world without screens. So every child has to write 25 things they do were there no screens in the world. And then we assign the homework. So I can tell you, I've been doing this for like 12 years now. When we first started assigning this, the kids didn't complain at all. Every year, it's like World War III when you assign this homework. And I think a couple of years ago, I assigned this, and a boy in the class stood up and said, what you're asking us to do is illegal. And I said, well, you still have to do it. And I want you to write me a little paragraph reflection on the experience. So this is the paragraph that student wrote. Last Saturday, I went 24 hours without media. It was difficult because my life revolves so much around media. I had to do other things like play with my dogs or walk at the park or even go for bike rides with my family. The best thing about doing this is after a while, you start to feel calm and relaxed. I believe all people should go 24 hours without media. So that's pretty typical of what I get back from students. And it's just a reminder that this is a generation who does not know life without screens. They just don't. They're an inherent part of their day every single day. So to give them a little break here and there is kind of a gift. And so they can relax and see what it's like. They might want to do it more if they like it. And I can tell you that this young man that fought me so bitterly, he asked me to assign this 2 more times during the school year. So it tells me that sometimes they need us to set these boundaries for them. In cyber civics, we have these letters that go home to parents, and they have activities that parents do together with their children. And you might guess the activity with this lesson is the parents are asked to go 24 hours without media. And every time I tell the kids about that, they're like, oh, this is great, or a bad idea. That's never going to happen. My parents can't live without their devices. So I got this little tidbit from one of my students. First of all, my parents are weak. They could not separate from their devices. It made it really hard for me to do this because they did not pay attention to me. I think it would have been easier if they did it with me. So that makes you kind of sad. And the research kind of matches that. Parents spend about 9 hours a day with screens, about the same as teenagers. 78% think they are good media use role models. So remember, the kids are looking to us. They do this from the minute they're come out of the chute. When they're little, they see adults on their phones all day long. And so they figure that's what it means to be an adult. So we have to remember to set those boundaries and know when to put down our own devices. All right, couple notable pieces of research here I wanted to share with you. This is a study done out of UCLA a few years ago. They had 2 groups of 6th graders that they took on a field trip out into the wilderness for 5 days, okay? One group could take their cell phones, the other group could not. They found that after those 5 days, the experimental group that had no devices were much better at reading facial expressions and cues, social cues, than the group that took their phones with them. And it was pretty significant. And that was after just 5 days. So you can imagine that if you extrapolate that out to every single solitary day of a young adolescent's life, it's really going to impede their ability to read facial expressions, social cues, all those important things that we want humans to be able to do. Another piece of research, and this is for teens, this is 13 and up, really huge study called the Goldilocks study, or the Goldilocks hypothesis. And they found that there was a point between low use and high use of tech that is just right for teens. They found that teens who had too little technology or no technology did not have great well-being because they were not connected with their peers, whereas the kids who had too much technology were also low in the well-being area. And they found that it's like a bell curve. There's somewhere right in the middle that's just perfect for teens. And it really depended on the teen. Every teen is different, but was somewhere around like 2 to 3 hours per day. They found that moderate amount of tech use, those kids had the best well-being. So it's called the Goldilocks hypothesis, if you'd like to take a look at it. All right, so here's the thing about screen time. When we hear that, oh, our kids are addicted to their screens, we have to remind ourselves that it's not their screens they're addicted to, they're addicted to each other. And this is really the work of adolescence. As kids reach late adolescence, it's time for them to detach from their families of origin, to reach out to their peers, to figure out what they like, who they are. And a lot of that work today is being done on their devices. So we're going to talk about that next. This is also from that 2022 study from Pew Internet. They found that of all the things a kid connect with online, the thing they love most is YouTube. Believe it or not, look at that number, 95%. YouTube is the #1 social media network.
Okay, is this going to be like one of those really long talks?
Yes, it is. For whoever asked. And I apologize for that. But anyway, when I tell parents that about YouTube, they're always surprised because we think about TikTok first, right? And I tested it on the 6th graders I teach. I said, what do you think is the #1 social media network for kids your age? And every kid said YouTube. So they know they love YouTube. But right behind that is TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat. So we're going to talk about all 4 of those tonight. All right, so I wanted to share this from that same study. 1 in 5 teens visit or use YouTube almost constantly. I think that's hilarious because I want to know how they're able to do that when they're supposedly in school. How do they get away with that? But yet that's what the research shows. Kids are on YouTube a lot. For those of you who are not so familiar with the app, more than 150, oh, that number is wrong. It's not enough zeros in there. It was 1.5 billion new videos are posted to YouTube every minute. Many are not whoops, sorry about that. Many of these videos are not appropriate for kids. They kind of slip through there. It's just the volume of videos that get posted. It's impossible for any kind of moderation to really happen. The site is entirely user generated, and it relies on those users to flag any videos that violate their terms of service. So it's really putting a lot of onus on the kids to actually manage their own content, which I think is a little bit unfair for kids. So a lot of things do slip through in regards to hate speech, sexual content, language. And there is a way for a parent to set up a supervised account for their child. But as you know, those of you who have teenagers, they usually like to manage their own accounts. Easy for them to do. All right, so YouTube is social media. We sometimes forget about that. And the reason for that is users are communicating to each other through YouTube, through comments and replies. I know this personally because we have a lot of student videos on YouTube and I get notifications when people comment, and I always know when a teacher is showing it in the classroom, because in the comments, the kids are like, oh, what are you eating for lunch? And who did you talk to at recess? They're commenting when they're supposed to be watching this video about online safety or whatever. So I think that's hilarious. Kids also follow updates of creators they like, and they can publish social media posts if they have a certain number of followers. All right, so teens are using YouTube like a Google. If there's something they want to learn about, they'd prefer to watch a video than read tons of text. So they'll Google things that they like. And a lot of things that pop up, you know, they'll watch the first video they looked up, and then they'll start getting recommendations on the same topic. So I tested this myself. This is what you see on the left. I looked up the moon landing, watched a video. All of a sudden I was getting all these suggested videos on the moon landing. But look at some of the videos I got. Did Stanley Kubrick fake the moon landings? I don't believe the moon landing happened. The moon landing conspiracy, unexplained objects. Joe Rogan on the moon landing conspiracy. So you can see how kids can fall down this rabbit hole, oftentimes of misinformation. Also, a lot of kids follow or subscribe to specific channels on news on YouTube. So you want to make sure that what they're subscribing to is legitimate information, not some sort of conspiracy theory site or whatever. All right, so there was a study done on misinformation on YouTube, and they found that this was during COVID. They found that 1/4 of the most viewed YouTube videos on COVID-19 contained misleading information that reached millions of viewers worldwide. And the other thing about YouTube is, you know, kids love their influencers, right? This is huge. And I'm always interested in this. Again, when I'm working with middle schoolers, I'm like, what influencers are you guys into this year? And like, they rattle off these names and they're like new every year. I cannot keep up with it. So they seem to be on top of who the hot influencers are. And I wanted to share this interesting study with you that was done with 12 to 15-year-olds. And they found that a lot of them obviously watch YouTubers, but they asked them what they wanted to be when they grew up. And 18% wanted to be doctors, but number 2 and 3 professions were social media influencer and YouTuber, right behind doctor. So kids see this as a very glamorous and financially lucrative career choice. So a lot of kids are wanting to be this kind of thing. All right, so I just wrote an article about YouTube. You're welcome to look at it. What I didn't mention is tomorrow I'll be sending a PDF with all the links of things that I'm talking about tonight, so you can look at it at your leisure if you like, but wrote about all the reasons that teens love YouTube if you want to dive into this deeper. And again, if I could ask everyone to mute, I'm hearing a lot of background noise. If you don't mind, that would be awesome. Thank you. Okay, so if you're concerned about YouTube, I have some ideas for you. Talk to your kids. That's the number one thing whenever there's anything you're concerned about. Ask them about what they're watching and what influencers they're following. It might be very interesting to you to find that out. If you're super concerned and your talking's not working, what you can do is look at your child's YouTube account. It's very easy for them to open one on their own. All they need is a Gmail account. Their YouTube page will display all their recently watched videos, their recommended videos based on their watch history, and suggestions for channels. So you can kind of see what direction they're going. And if your child thinks you're lurking and they delete their watch history, don't worry. Their recommendations will still be related to things that they've watched. So it's a way to kind of get a glimpse into what your kids are seeing on YouTube. All right, I'm going to move on to TikTok. This is the new kid, well, sort of the new kid on the block that's just grown by leaps and bounds. For those of you who haven't looked at it, it's an app for sharing user-generated videos also. It's completely owned by a Chinese company called ByteDance. Interesting tidbit about them, they do not let their own kids in China watch TikTok. It's not available to kids there. It's available to kids everywhere else in the world. So think about that for a minute when your kids are watching tons of TikTok. The minimum age to open an account is 13, but they don't use any age verification tools, and it shows the users are quite young. 37% are between 10 and 19. And during COVID, TikTok experienced a 180% growth with 15 to 25-year-olds. So it grew a lot during COVID. All right, so it kind of started out as this dance video app. It's changed a lot. There's all kinds of stuff now on TikTok. There's stuff. Food is very popular on the app, style tips, fashion tips, hair tips, all that. Algorithms feed what kids like. watch the algorithm that's very, very strong on YouTube. No, I mean, on TikTok, nobody really quite understands how it works, but it seems to be able to analyze what you look at, how long you watch it, what kind of other things you look at, and then it gives you more of the same. A lot of the stuff on TikTok still uses popular music, so there's a lot of swearing, foul language, a lot of sexually suggestive and explicit material on this app. So there's really two basic features on it. On the left, what you see here is your For You feed. Again, that's really based on their technologies. It analyzes your behavior on TikTok and it feeds you more of what you like. I will make a little side note here. I took this screenshot from my own TikTok, and you can see on For You, it recommended to me Jennifer Lopez, which I am not a Jennifer Lopez fan. No offense to her, but it's just not music I like. So I thought that was interesting that it thought I liked Jennifer Lopez. So maybe my algorithm's broken, I don't know. And then on the right is the follow feed, and this is based on people you follow. So I don't follow a lot of people. This is an attorney I know that gives very good tips on internet law. All right, so the other thing that became very popular during COVID were these challenges on TikTok. Some of them were cute, funny, family challenges, adorable stuff. Some of them were downright dangerous and inappropriate. A lot of stuff about damaging school property, etc. So something to keep an eye out is the latest challenge of the day. They change weekly. And I'm going to show you just a little clip of a dance challenge so you can get a flavor of the kind of things that's typical on TikTok.
Might just go psycho. Too many drunk white hoes. Said I won't, but I might though. Walking on a tightrope. I might just go psycho. Might just go psycho. Too many drunk white.
You kind of get a gist of it. So there was a pretty significant article in the Wall Street Journal about TikTok videos taking a mental health toll on girls because of the sexualized content. The way it works, the more sexualized the content, the more likes the person gets, the more likely that content will be put on others' feeds. For a young girl who's developing her identity, to be swept up into a sexual world like that is hugely destructive. TikTok's algorithm regularly propels virtual nobodies into millions of viewers For You pages, regardless of the creator's follower count or past video virality. So again, more sexualized videos equals more viral videos. And I think kids have plugged into that, and it's, not great for especially teen girls' mental health. Okay, I had to show this to you because I'm always, whenever I do these talks, I'm like, okay, what's viral right now on TikTok and why? So this is the thing currently that's very viral. 2 Mississippi women who go viral on TikTok for twerking in a cotton field. So.
Hold up. If you see your friend getting ratchet, if you see your friend getting ratchet, when that beat drop, I need you to get up and hype your best friend up. Hype her, tell her, I said throw it, 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 throw it.
So go figure that by this writing had over 8 million views. So it's kind of stuff that goes crazy on that little app. All right, so I mentioned to you earlier that kids are using YouTube like a Google. Well, that's been surpassed now by TikTok. TikTok is now the place to go when kids want to search for information. Again, they prefer a video explanation to the things they're interested in rather than reading a lot of text. This is extremely problematic on a place like TikTok where it's user-generated stuff. So think about who's creating the information that our kids are getting. Think about that for a moment. And a study that just came out from NewsGuard is finding that TikTok search engine pumps misinformation to its young users. They're constantly fed false and misleading claims. Almost 20% of the videos presented as search results contain misinformation. So this is so problematic because imagine if your child's doing a research paper for school, and they're getting their information from here, or they're just trying to learn about something and they get this crazy information. So such an argument for teaching media literacy in school, because kids need to know how to analyze information more than ever, because this is where their information is coming from. And just here's another thing just today I pulled. Dentists are concerned about this. There's something on YouTube that you can find with the hash mark DIY dentist that also has millions of views on TikTok. And not only does it sell products related to dental care, it gives kids complete misinformation and dangerous information about dental care. All right, and this is just another thing I shared last week with younger parents of younger kids, but I found this so problematic. I was teaching a class a year and a half ago, and kids came in and said, "Oh my gosh, we saw someone commit suicide on YouTube," and I thought, on TikTok, and I thought that's not even possible, and it indeed was. And so luckily we were able to have a conversation about it during class, but I saved the kids chat and I found it very poignant. Student 1, that man in the video, it was so sad. Student 2, 3 sad face emojis. Student 3, OMG, OMG. Student 4, I'm scarred for life. Student 5, it's really graphic. Student 2, people on TikTok are disguising the video as puppies and kittens to trick kids into watching. Student 6, I had to watch Peppa the Pig for an hour afterwards to feel better. So again, you know, these apps, the sheer volume of content that's getting uploaded so fast is making it really impossible for any kind of moderation to happen in real time. So stuff like this does seep through. All right, so TikTok has probably done the best, in my view, of creating safety features for parents and kids. So this was all updated just very recently. So a lot of times when kids use apps, their account defaults to public, everyone sees it. On TikTok, it defaults to private, which I think is really good. And all that means is that while others can search for them, they still have to approve people as their friend in order for them to contact them or see their content. If the child is 16 and older, their account will default to public. The other thing they've done that's great is videos created by users under 16 are restricted by default for download. And TikTok is also setting limits on when teens get notifications. Between 13 and 15, they'll not see notifications after 9. For users 16 to 17, they won't see notifications after 10. And I will note here, because I know this firsthand from teaching students, they lie about their age all the time. They think it's funny to tell TikTok they're 69 years old or 87 years old. They think that's hilarious. And, you know, they're not protected by any of these.
I'm on.
They're not protected by any of these restrictions that TikTok has put in place. All right, so they have something now on TikTok called family pairing, and it allows a parent or guardian to link their account with their child's account and manage all these things that you see here on the screen time management, searching, discoverability. Very, very easy to use. If you go into your settings and privacy, you'll see family pairing. These screens will walk you through how to set it up with your child. It even gives you a QR code, does it for you. Very, very easy to use. And then they also offer some very good controls for digital well-being and screen time management that you can set limits on this app. It's not to say that a child isn't going to unset it, but that's why I'm such an advocate for teaching kids reasons why to manage their screen time, so they themselves will start using these settings within their devices. All right, so that was a quickie on TikTok. Instagram, you're probably a lot more familiar with. A lot of parents use this, which is, I think, why it's not growing as fast as the others. Again, it's a lot of visual content. I wrote about this when the Facebook files came out, because Instagram's own research indicated that this focus on images and beauty was damaging to teens, especially teenage girls. And that's because the app is very image focused. Different from the other ones, your profile page on Instagram are all your previous images. So kids really curate this and they want to look good because they know that's permanent on the site. So the use of Facetune, which is a self-editing tool, which exploded during the pandemic, is used extensively on this app so that kids really look perfect. And then other kids see these perfect images, a lot of stress, feeling like they can't live up to this. And it isn't just affecting teenage girls, but teen boys are often comparing themselves to these ideal masculine bodies that they see on this app. There's supposedly a no nudity policy on Instagram. I learned about this. I attended a conference on pornography, and this was kind of shocking to me, that you could easily find your way to porn by using hashtags on the app. So I tried it. I'm sorry, I did. I hashtagged babes, I think it was. Use this thing here. And yeah, babes. And this is what came up for me. Just there you'll see on my screen by hashtagging that term. So again, very easy for kids to slip into a world of pornography through this app. Instagram is another place where kids are going to get their news. About 54% say they get their news from Instagram. And then, so the upside of this is that a large majority of teens are saying that current events are important to them. And so that's pretty nice. But the other thing I'd like to point out is just think of today's current events. I mean, they're not very happy. And so what I think about when I see these numbers and I think about kids getting current events on their apps is like the little 9-year-old who lied about her age to be on Instagram, who's alone in her room, and seeing these really scary headlines without a parent there to provide comfort or support. So I think we have to remember that when they install these apps. And just like the others, Instagram recommended false claims about COVID-19. And like the others, this happens through their recommendation algorithm suggested posts, which is very common on all of these sites. All right, so they just unveiled their safety tools. They're not as extensive as TikTok. The other difference too is it's also a situation where a parent can link their account with their teens in order to do certain things. But the difference is teens have to invite their parent or guardian to supervise them. And I as I was saying last week, is I think it's hilarious. I asked my students, how many of you would invite your parents to supervise you? And kids just thought that was so funny. So I think that's a little different thing on Instagram. I don't know how successful that's going to be. But what that allows you to do is just kind of limited functionality, honestly. They can see how much time their teens spend on the app and set limits. Teens can notify parents when they report something, and parents can see who they follow and who follows them, which frankly, we were able to do all along. So it doesn't really change all that much. All right, Snapchat. So this is third, but I've read some other studies where even though it's third, it's the one that kids like most. And I'm going to tell you what they like about it. This is the one where kids are exchanging texts and videos and all that disappear. So kids thought that was great because it wouldn't affect their digital reputation, but yet kids are smart. So they take screenshots and share it also elsewhere. So as I always tell my students, nothing really ever disappears online. This was the first app to tap into a very human thing that we are storytellers. We love to share and tell our stories. So that's what Snapchat, it was the first one to allow people to do that. Kids would make little stories of their day and share it with their friends. Soon the publishing companies jumped on board. They make little stories every day and they share it with kids on Snapchat. So lots of current events on this app as well. And again, think about our current events. You know, some of it is very scary and maybe not appropriate for our youngest users. The other thing that kids like about this is they have snap maps where they can see where their friends are and their friends can see where they are at any time of the day or night. And this can often add to a stress level of a kid, or, you know, if they see all their friends are at somebody's house and they weren't invited, they see that immediately on this app. The other thing kids can do is they can text each other internally on this app. So if you're moderating their text messages somewhere else, you're probably not seeing these because they disappear. This one started out sort of known the sexting app because of the disappearing feature, but it's really changed. And the reason kids love this one is because they can be more authentic and silly and funny. They don't have that profile thing that Instagram has where they feel like they always have to look perfect. All right, snap streaks are another way that Snapchat has been very smart at keeping and holding kids' attention. It's a little mechanism where a child is encouraged to send a snap to the same person for consecutive days and keep that going and going and going. And they're rewarded with these little emojis. So for kids, it's like a friendship thing. They feel like if they drop the snap streak, it's going to hurt their friends' feelings. So it's a lot of stress to keep this going. And I hear about it extensively when I assign that 24-hour media vacation. They all freak out about their snap streaks. So this is another very smart way that Snapchat held on to kids' attention. They have also recently come out with what they call the Family Center. So it's kind of a takeoff on TikToks too. Same way you can do a lot of the same things here. You can view your teen's friends, see who they've messaged, report abuse. Very easy to set up by going under the settings, privacy settings in this account. So as I mentioned, this one kids love because of the authenticity thing. Kids are kind of getting away from feeling like they have to look perfect all the time on their apps. So there's a new kid on the block. You might have heard of it. It's called Be Real. It just came out this year and it's already experienced a 315% year-to-date increase in downloads, which is pretty fast growth for a one-year app. And this one's really different. You can only post on it once a day. And everyone that's on the app gets a notification. You have a little window, like a 2-minute window to post. and everyone sees it, and that's the end of it. So it encourages kids to post whatever they're doing at that moment, even if it's boring or mundane. So it's this whole thing about being authentic and real. So I had a funny video for you guys last week. I have another funny one video for you, so you don't have to listen to me drone on. You got a little break, but this is a new video about Be Real.
Hi, how are you today? Well, so? Oh, perfect. Waiting for me. So, I just wanted to ask a question. Screen is that okay? Okay. And then,
Everybody on the ground! You! We need everything from the ball in the bag.
You always say no one has to get hurt.
Oh my God. Open the vault, lady.
I'm going to specific yet.
We'll pick it up.
What was that?
I'm sorry, I'm not calling the police, I swear.
Slide it over now or we kill you.
I want to, but I can't. Because it's
What is it?
time to be real.
Time to be what?
Time to be real. Wait, it is?
Yep, I just got the notification. It's time to be real. Okay, everybody shut up.
Yeah. Or tell us what Be Real is.
It's amazing. It's this app that blew up over the summer. It's the only honest social media.
You think I'm an idiot? Honest social media doesn't exist.
You're so cynical. I was too. But with Be Real, you can only post once a day when the app sends out a notification.
So everyone posts a pic at the same time, no matter where they are or what they're doing.
Oh, so there's no posturing.
Stop engaging.
It's not status oriented, and that's why it's called Be Real.
Yes, you're getting it!
Everybody needs to shit. What are you guys doing?
2 minutes to post. Quick, pose.
Wait. So is it a picture of you or me?
That's the other thing. It takes a front and back facing photo at the same time.
Yo, what? That is crazy.
Do you guys like all work for Be Real or something? No, we're just so aligned with the mission of the platform. Okay. You don't even think about it.
Where the hell is security? Come on, download it. You don't want to post late.
What happens if we post late?
It tells people.
No.
So then everyone knows that you're
Be Real wasn't being real.
Okay, I downloaded it.
Dude.
And I'm gonna be real
No.
about exactly what I'm doing.
Don't post this on social media.
No. No more curation. I don't care who knows what I'm doing right now. I'm gonna be real.
No.
Download Be Real today. Probably only a couple more minutes before it stops being fun.
All right, I just thought that was cute. So we have just covered just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to social media, but I wanted to wrap this part up by saying there's a huge variation in all these sites on how they just handle disturbing and harmful content, misinformation, advertising. And, I get asked this all the time, like, what's going to change? And it's like, waiting for the platforms to monitor or regulate themselves is going to take a very long time. And for regulation to happen through our government's going to take a very long time. And we've got kids growing up right now with all these new things coming out every second. So I just think teaching them how to maintain kind of safety within their peers and each other and what their norms are is so important when it comes to these social media apps. So hopefully that you will have time to talk to your kids about them and have them use those settings and talk about the reasons why. So just think that's the only thing that we can really hope for to keep our kids safe. All right, I want to talk about another really important pillar of education, and that's their digital reputations. As you know, everything they post online stays online forever. It can be viewed and searched for by vast invisible audiences. Others can share what they post. In other words, there's no oops key on the internet. We know that more and more colleges are looking at the digital reputations of students in order to figure out who to let in. 75% of colleges either monitor social media as part of their admissions decision or will review social media brought to their attention. Headlines everywhere about kids making just adolescent mistakes on social media and paying a huge cost. From the famous story a few years ago of Harvard admitting all these students, some of them breaking off and forming what they thought was a private Facebook page where they exchanged inappropriate and obscene memes. The admissions officers got wind of it and decided those 10 kids could not attend Harvard. Heartbreaking story. And then we've seen more and more kids losing scholarships, jobs, internship possibilities because of things they post online. So I don't ever want to see this happen again. I spent a lot of time teaching kids about digital reputation. I can tell you 3 things that do not work. Lecturing kids about their online life is so ineffective. They know we didn't grow up with this. That goes in one ear and out the other. One-time assemblings don't work because, as you can see, this is a very vast, huge world with a lot of moving parts. So it really takes kids time to figure it out. And then filing fear doesn't work. Kids are way too excited about using their apps and all that stuff. It's where their friends are. So we're not going to scare them away from it. So we try to approach it with kids from a different angle. I'm going to show you a very short kids video, and then I'll tell you what we do with the kids. Oops.
We all have to admit, the internet is pretty cool. It provides a lot of opportunities to learn new things and connect with interesting people. But when you use the internet, it's important to remember that every time you text, tweet, post, comment, play a game, blog, or even fill out a form, the internet has a way of remembering you and what you do. All of your online activities add up to make your digital billboard. A collection of all the stuff you've ever done online. It tells the world all about you. And it's up to you to decide what to put on it. Everything you post can potentially be shared, which is awesome. But remember, it can be seen by anyone and everyone. And Google always knows where to find you. So you're gonna want this billboard to make a good impression, because many people will judge you by what they see online. So think twice about the friends you make, about the things you post, and the selfies you upload. Because you want your digital billboard to be just as awesome as you are.
So when we show the kids that video, we then play a little game with them, and we tell them to pretend to be a college admissions person at their favorite college, and that we have 2 potential applicants for them to decide upon who they want to give a full athletic scholarship to based on their digital reputation. So I'm going to quickly show you the 2 candidates. This is a young man by the name of David Downey. He writes a letter to the admissions committee saying he's a senior at Westlake High School. He plays soccer. He's the league's most valuable player. Very high GPA. He volunteers for the Boys and Girls Club, and he wants to attain his dream of becoming an urban planner. So we take a look at our young urban planner's digital footprint, and we discover that he has toilet papered a house in his neighborhood and put it on Instagram. And then we see that allegedly he hacked into a school computer, and that's in this local newspaper. And then in his Twitter account, we find out that he wrote 7-1 last night against the Green Mountain Diablos. They played like little girls, #losers. So usually when I show that to the students, they're like, well, let's look at the other candidate. So this is our second candidate. Whoops, that shouldn't have popped up. Sarah Ann Adams. She tells the admissions committee that she's the senior class president. She has a 4.1 GPA. She's been a member of the Honor Society. She wants to major in English, become a writer. She tutors kids, etc. So we look at her digital reputation. You see the first thing that popped up there. We see that she participated in one of those challenges I told you about on TikTok, the bathroom prank, where she was involved in taking the soap dispenser and she put it on her digital reputation. We see here where she said she was on the honor roll, but yet when we look at the webpage of the school, her name does not appear under the A's. And then finally, we look at her food blog, and we notice that our English major is a terrible speller. In addition to that, somebody else on the blog accuses her of stealing her recipe and picture. So the kid's job is to decide who to give the scholarship to based on who's more honest and honorable and has better moral character. Usually they decide that neither of these 2 do. But what I love about this lesson is it illustrates the complexity of digital reputations and how you cannot always believe what you see online. Because the second part of this is we ask kids to think about this. If they had carefully read that article about the kid hacking into the school computer, they would have discovered that it was a case of mistaken identity, because the article was about Dave Downing, not David Downing, who's on the lacrosse team, not the soccer team. So it requires them to do careful reading. Also, when they decide that the girl wasn't on the honor roll, we say, well, look, sometimes schools take a really long time to update their websites. And then finally, when they say, oh gosh, that girl stole someone else's recipe, we don't know who that person is who posted that. It could be a troll or someone who is a competing food blogger. So again, it underscores like digital reputations are complex. It's not just what kids post about themselves. It's about what others post about them. And sometimes that information is not accurate and true. And I know that when I teach this to kids, they're like, well, what do I do? And I'm like, the best you can do is try to post things that you reflect positively about yourself, and be super careful about who you friend and follow, because what they put online about you and tag you in contributes to your digital reputation too. So that's a very quick way of telling you what a complex world our kids are growing up in. And when parents worry about this, what I like to tell them is these college admissions officers largely are not looking for bad things. They're looking for the gems out there, because they know that kids are not just a sum of their test score or a great essay that someone probably helped them write, that there's kids out there doing amazing things. And that's what they often find on social media. The other thing today, it's not an option for kids not to have a digital reputation. We know that half of employers will not hire someone they can't find online. And that's because if you're not online, they figure you have something to hide. So this is just an inescapable part of being a young person today, is having this reputation that you need to maintain and make sure reflects positively about yourself. The last pillar I'm going to talk about tonight is probably also one of the most important ones. I think they're all important, but we know privacy is just a big deal today. And everything that our kids are doing, from their Google Classroom to these apps they download to social media sites they use, is collecting their personal information, profiling them, figuring out what to target them with. And this happens the minute our kids go online. Another way to look at it, your phone when you want to buy something, we all know about that, right? So there is a law that protects kids. It's called the Child Online Privacy Protection Act. It protects the privacy of kids under 13. It means that sites and apps must get parental consent in order to collect the personal information of kids under 13. COPPA is the reason why social media sites require users to be 13. Yet we know that 3/4 of children between 10 and 12 open accounts by simply lying about their ages. So they are not protected by this important law. The other thing that I love to tell students is that, you know, when they're young, they're not going to have a very rich digital reputation yet, because they're just starting out. But yet when they open an account on Instagram, their profile picture and their bio are immediately public, even if their account is private. So a lot of kids like to make up silly bios, inappropriate bios, pick a ridiculous picture. And that's such a, you know, not a great choice for a young child, because again, that's part of their digital reputation. So these are just aspects of personal privacy that they should know about. So here's what teens are worrying about today. Teens don't want to leave a bad impression that could hurt their college or job prospects. They worry they might be photographed at any moment by friends, classmates, strangers, parents. They're worried about their images being taken or shared out of context or be used to generate a viral meme. And they're worried about doxing. This is when someone posts sensitive information online about another with the intent of stirring up trouble. So these are concerns that previous generations did not have to worry about. And we know our teens today find a lot of stress and anxiety thinking about this. In class, we address privacy from a lot of different angles. One thing I have students do is read the privacy policies of the apps they use. So we did TikTok last year. We actually taught them the vocabulary of privacy policies. What's a third party? What's a cookie? What's a web beacon? These are things they should know. It's their language of the day. And believe it or not, kids like this, and they love to dive into the adult mistakes they find on these apps. And they're sometimes pretty shocked at how much information these apps collect about them. So I think in the interest of time, I guess I'll just play a few seconds of this. This is kids in my class after we had taught them about privacy policies. They were so excited about it. They mentioned it during a little interview that they had.
Now, with an entire generation of kids growing up with social media as familiar as a good old PB&J, one program is trying to teach them how to protect their data online before it's too late. With Facebook facing fresh backlash for sharing people's personal information without their consent, These kids in California are reading the fine print.
We've been learning about like privacy policies and terms of agreement.
It freaked you out?
Yeah. It's like,
You guys have friends in 7th grade, obviously, outside of this school and outside your class. Do any of them read the terms of agreement on social media?
no. I know.
But they admit they feel the pull. Who texts? Everybody texts. Who FaceTimes?
FaceTime. Oh, yeah, definitely.
And in this class, their devices aren't a distraction, they're their homework. What is this?
So I'm not going to bore you with the whole thing, but you get the idea there. They were so excited to tell about the privacy policy. At that time, it was Snapchat, and all those kids at the table had decided to delete Snapchat from their phones. And, you know, albeit it was probably temporary, but at the time they felt like it was so invasive, it was collecting too much personal information. So I love it that they came up with that conclusion on their own. All right, so I want to finish tonight with some tips on what you can do. There's a lot, but I'm going to zone in on 3. Respect age requirements. I think so many of our online problems would go away if we just let kids be kids a little bit longer. And to remember that nearly every social media site requires kids to be at least 13 years of age. And that's because not because of COPA or laws or any other reason, but it's because it takes kids about 13 years of life to develop ethical thinking skills. And almost everything, choices that they make online requires ethical thinking. It's just complex out there. Like, do I upload a picture that's going to hurt a friend's feelings? Do I answer a post angrily? All that stuff requires higher order thinking that these younger kids just aren't ready to do yet. The other thing is, when you think of your digital parenting style, be like a dolphin. Be firm, be flexible, be curious, be playful. I love that. Here's an example of a mom being an excellent dolphin.
Deacon, this is very important. I brought you here because I have questions for you.
Okay, let's hear it.
It's about TikTok.
Oh, God.
What is TikTok? For all the moms out there, what is TikTok?
Oh, God. Okay, so basically, it's like a short form video platform for kids, social media.
So people like pick a song they like.
Yeah.
And then they like lip sync the words.
Yeah.
Should I be on TikTok?
Sure. You
Should
should, yeah.
Really? Will you help me make a video for TikTok?
Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
Rolly, rolly, rolly. Something like that.
Not like that.
Like break the legs. Like break the legs.
No,
What's this move?
No.
Oh, I saw one girl doing something about bones for Halloween.
What was she doing? You look pretty cool when you do it.
Okay.
No, I have to correct you.
Very good dolphin there, participating with her son. And then finally, education. You guys are doing it. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir because you're here educating yourselves, which is huge. And I think when you educate yourself and your kids, especially kids, when they do activities and all the stuff that helps them understand digital life better, it really helps them maintain balance themselves between their real life and their screen lives, to protect themselves and others, because they create norms together and to create change. So that's super important. So a couple things, if you want to check out our curriculum, it's at the Cyber Civics website. This is our site for parents, and it's really packed with all kinds of research and information on everything I talked about tonight and more. We have some learning hubs that you'll see up there, but under these hubs, we have something on Snapchat, TikTok, all these cyberbullying, sexting, topics that you want to know about. So feel free to check that out. We also put out a pretty substantial newsletter every couple of weeks with new research and articles that we find interesting. So feel free to subscribe to that if you like. And then there's my book, and there's a free discussion guide that goes along with the book. And I wrote this really in the hopes that communities would read it together chapter by chapter and talk about the topics in each chapter, because that's really what works. I mean, me talking to you just one night isn't going to really make a huge change. But when you start talking to each other, it's so helpful to our kids when the parents of their friends kind of come to common agreements. Because I'll tell you, working with kids, what's really hard on them is when somebody has every app in the world and somebody has no apps at all, and they're in the same peer group. And it's so helpful when you can, talk about what your kids are dealing with and help them be on the same page. So even if you don't read the book, the discussion guide is free on all of our websites. Feel free to download it and use it. And then finally, we're super active on social media on all these sites. And what we try to do is just put out short little tidbits of information. little clips that a busy parent might have time to look at with just updates and tips and tricks on how to be a great digital parent. And then reach out to me if there's something I could answer that I didn't get to tonight. And I know that we have plenty of time now for discussion and questions, and I hope that you have some, because I feel like I did that really fast and there's so much more that I'd love to impart to you, but I want to talk about things that are relevant to your community. So feel free to shoot any question you like. I see a hand up, Melissa. Melissa, I think you had a hand up. You're welcome to unmute, or do I have to do that? Oh, yes.
No, sorry about that. I'm doing it on my phone, and it was hard to scroll over. Old parent, not mastering the technology. So I guess one of the things that's concerning to me, besides all of this, is one of the things that you said about the videos and learning from YouTube, and as parents, like, we can do so much to sort of have these conversations, but I'm kind of disturbed that our school actually uses a lot of videos in teaching. And so how can we, what's the right kind of, in sifting through all of the potential for misinformation, how do we explain what's a good video and what's a bad video?
Well, that's such a great question. And I think that's a wonderful case for a school to teach media literacy first, because there's so many media literacy strategies that we teach the kids, like, okay, 3 essential questions. And this comes from the Stanford Education Group. Whenever you find something online, the first thing is like, who is behind the information? Like, you want to, before you watch a video, who produced it? Like, is it a legitimate company, or is it just some random YouTuber in their basement, right? What's their evidence? Like, if they're asserting some sort of claim, you want to look at their evidence to decide if it's a legitimate claim. And then finally, what do other people say about the content? Like, if you're watching something about, global warming, what do other people say about that organization? Is it a legitimate organization? And I think whenever a school uses a video or anything online, they should first take the kids through those 3 questions, or the teacher should do it at home the night before to make sure that what they're showing is a legitimate piece of information. And if anybody wants those 3 questions, contact me, because we're just finishing up our videos for next year, and we just made 3 videos on those 3 questions.
I have a question. I'm wondering if you know anything, if you can say anything about, so in my line of work, which is substance use prevention, we hear a lot about kids ordering press pills through some of these sites. And most of the time, they think they may be getting Percocets or Xanax or something like that. And they end up getting, like enough to kill them, a dose of fentanyl. And that's been in the news quite a bit, especially it seems like more in California. But I have parents asking me this periodically about this.
I just did a little panel with, sadly, a parent whose child overdosed from ordering drugs through Snapchat. And it's just heartbreaking, honestly. That's what's confusing about these apps, is that we can't control everything our teenagers do. I mean, they're going to be contacting people we don't know, or people that, might contact them in a way that we have no way of seeing. So I applaud these apps for having better parental controls so we can check out our kids' friends and followers. But frankly, it's still a daunting job, because there's literally thousands of people that can reach out to our kids, and there's stuff that our kids can find. So, I mean, our best strategy against this is, again, teaching kids about these dangers in school together, because kids can watch out for each other. And that's what I really try to push out there, is like, one kid might be going in a wrong direction, but the thing about it, when it's online, usually their friends see it, and other kids can be what we call upstanders and step in and help that friend, and maybe contact the site where it's happening, or talk to a trusted adult. But we're going to do much better at helping our kids if we teach them how to help themselves and each other, because again, the parent is sadly sometimes the last to know. And you're right, drugs are available online. It's it's the new street corner. They used to go to the corner. They don't need to do that anymore. They go to the corners of the internet.
Hi, can I pop on? Thank you so much for this presentation. I'm a parent of a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old, and I'm also a child psychologist, and I work with a lot of adolescents. And one of the questions that I've had, I know you talked about the importance of digital literacy and educating our kids, but and maybe less focus on the screen time. But I do find sometimes in my own life, but also in many of the families I work with, there is this, they're very busy households, and it's easy for it just to fill all the free time and into the night, and I know that there are various ways to set limits on different devices or on different apps or websites. And is that something that you promote or discuss in
the parental controls, you mean?
Yeah, the parental controls, I guess. Yeah, or setting screen time limits, or just sort of having some enforcement.
That's such a hard one because, the parental controls, there's some great third-party apps out there that will control that. But every kid I've ever met, when they turn into a teenager, they know how to disable it or get around it. So they stop working pretty quick. And again, like, we have to give our kids reasons to log off because they're not very good at controlling their own emotions and their intentions until a certain age. They don't have that regulatory piece in place in their brains yet. So that's why I point back to a couple things. The tech agreement will help sometimes because you have it in black and white, and there's consequences if they don't adhere to the amount of hours you set. And now you can watch those hours on all these apps I just showed you. Parents can see how many hours the kids spent. Teaching them the reasons why. And one of the things we do in the classroom is we talk a lot about the strategies that tech companies use to kind of hook kids and trick them into staying on all the time. The scrolling feeds and the notifications and all that stuff. And oftentimes teenagers rebel against things that try to control them. So we want to tap into that and say, hey, it's not your mom that's controlling you. It's, Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat. And so teaching them those mechanisms often helps. And again, like, kids are that herd mentality. Like, if you can get a bunch of peers to decide together, hey, let's not text each other after 10 o'clock, or let's not do this, that's super effective as well. And I know that sounds pie in the sky, but over the years, I've had so many classes where I've taught the stuff, and then we create norms together, and the kids will come up with that themselves and say, look, this is way too stressful. Let's decide together. We're not going to be on after this time. And, kids will follow what other kids do. So, I mean, those are just a bunch of different ideas out there. And again, as you well know through your line of work, every kid is different. And some kids are more susceptible to the addictive qualities of technology than others. And for those, sadly, it's like time for some sort of program to really help them detox. But it's complicated out there. And we feel the effects. I mean, we all know that we're drawn to it as our spouses, friends, and relatives. So it's a tough world out there.
Melissa, do you have another question?
I do. So one of the other things that's sort of been, troubling and difficult to navigate throughout this whole thing is privacy, and how to, at the same time that this is a place where kids are developing their independence, we are also turning into, or, out of necessity, basically like a surveillance state. And, we are surveying them and really invading their privacy. And so how do we, I don't know if there's any sort of, hard and fast rule, I highly doubt it, but any advice or any input as to how to respect your kids' privacy, while also being aware of like what's out there?
I think that at a certain point, and especially with teenagers, we have to let them have their lives on their apps, because it's just part of adolescence where they need to have that independence from their parents. But parents should be aware if there's changes in their behavior that warrant us taking a deeper look. So it's this fine balancing act of letting them have their independence until there's a problem and we see it from other factors. And that's a time to step in and try to help. But you're right, surveilling, I am not a big proponent of third-party apps that surveil our kids at all. And I think these settings that I just showed you work best when the kid's on board and they decide to set them for themselves, frankly.
Anyone else have a question?
I had one more quick question. I was curious about your take on the wait until 8th program, which I know gets discussed in various districts.
Oh my gosh, I have been asked about that so much lately. It's crazy. And you know, here's my feeling on that. It's great to wait. Good luck waiting till 8th. Honestly, I think that I am, like you could see from my talk, I am not big on giving young kids phones, but 8th grade's like old, and like my 8th graders, they're using their phones in the classroom to look things up. Or like we do a lot of work where the kids will text me their answers like during the class live so that I can have them on the screen. So my thing is I teach kids how to use the technology in positive, productive ways. So what I like better, and this came from the parents I've worked with, is the way cyber civics is set up. The first year, which is 6th grade, is digital citizenship. A lot of schools teach it in 5th grade. And they came up with wait till after cyber civics. So they require their kids to have a year of digital citizenship lessons before they give them their phone. And I like that because there's no point in waiting if you're not teaching. Like, it's not about waiting. It's like teaching them how to use it properly, because kids are pretty good at that if you show them how, right? So that's my feeling on that. I just think it's unrealistic to wait that long unless you teach them ahead of time. Do you know any schools out in your area that are implementing that?
Not so much schools, but just kind of groups of parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel like, is there any place where I'm actually more interested in some sort of like no phones at school policy during the school day, because even though you're using them for your classroom interaction, I feel like that's just kind of like opening the door for kids to abuse them. And I am more interested in seeing how a district can get on board with a policy that's like, you come to school, your phone is gone, and it's available to you when you leave.
Yeah.
That's something that would be more palatable for me. And so basically I'm kind of like, convince me why that's not right.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up, because what I didn't explain fully is where I personally teach has that policy. The kids come in, the phones go in a cubby, and they're not touched again until the kids leave at the end of the day. They know that when I teach digital literacy, and again, I don't use phones at all in 6th grade, at all in 7th grade, but I start using them in 8th grade because I want them to integrate them and learn how to use them as a tool for research and exploration in a positive way. So under my instruction, when we need them, they go to their cubby, they take the phone out. Okay, we're all going to look up this article together on our phones. And you're going to use those 3 questions as you do, I guide them through media literacy exercise using their phones in a productive way. Because that's the whole point, is like, if they're going to have this tool, we might as well teach them how to do it in ways that are for research and study and learning information. So I didn't want you to think that the school was a free-for-all. It's a Waldorf school, so like they traditionally have hated technology. So the fact that I get to do this at all is kind of like amazing. But those schools more and more are teaching this program, and that's how they integrate the devices as the kids get older. Yes, Layla?
Trying to unmute there. Sorry. My husband and I are on separate computers in the same room, so we were having an echo. My question is more about screen time specifically, and I think that's one of our biggest struggles. We have an 8th grader, and I'm really on board with the what you were saying, the American Academy of Pediatrics, 2 to 3 hours a day. But that leads to a whole lot of conflict in our house, and there's sort of the balance between relationship and not being at odds. versus what's a healthy amount of screen time. And I know, you know, there's the screen usage and the content, but there's also, I think, the extent of time. What do you say for that?
You know what? I'm going to send you this PDF tomorrow, and I don't know if it's kind of boring. I don't think it is, though. That Goldilocks hypothesis that I was telling you about, I'll send you actually the article that describes it. It's a really good study, and it really kind of underscores that well-being piece for kids and how there's like that happy medium spot. And I go back to that 2.5 to 3 hours per day. But you know, your 8th grader would be old enough to understand this. Is like, this is what research has discovered is good for you. You know, like they've discovered that kids who do more than that just don't feel good, you know, and everybody wants to feel good, right? So there's a medium spot here. So if you stay within that spot, you're going to feel pretty good tomorrow. And the research actually breaks it down by the day of the week, you know, and what you're doing. Like there's one amount of time for gameplay. There's another amount of time for social media. It's different on the weekends than it is during the week. So I would really point you to that to read what feels good to teens and kind of use that as a guiding post.
Can you just say where it is so that we could look it up?
If you look up, it's called the Goldilocks hypotheses, and the main researcher has a very long, unintelligible name that starts with a P. So you'll find it. There's a lot of articles about it.
Anyone else have any last questions for our presenter, Diana, today? Okay, well, thank you so much for presenting.
Oh, you're so welcome. And again, I'll follow up tomorrow with the other items that I promised. So
if you missed my introduction at the beginning, I just wanted to introduce myself again. I run the Easthampton Healthy Youth Coalition. I'm the outreach coordinator, and we have a parenting support group and also a parenting book club. And I'm going to be leading this book, discussing it in March, if anyone's interested in that. I'm also going to be leading another book before that called Brainstorm by Daniel Siegel. Looks like this. It's another great book about mostly about teen brain development and how to relate with our teenagers. So we're going to be posting all the recordings of this presentation and also last week's presentation on all of our co-sponsoring organizations pages. So that would be the Emily Williston Library, Easthampton Learning Foundation, the Easthampton Healthy Youth Coalition, and also the Easthampton Public Schools page. And again, thank you all so much for being here. And I hope you all have a really nice night.
all right. Thank you so much. See you later.